Come join our merry dance to the rhythm of goodbye. Farewell the jewel crown, farewell the velvet gown. Watch it all come tumbling down. Goodbye to the crown. Goodbye to the crown. Goodbye to the king of nothing really. Wave of a hand and a life of Riley. Pot Nazi, Pod King Billy. Goodbye to the crown. Goodbye to the dear old mum, mummified on gin and rum. Smile and wave and just play dumb. Goodbye to the crown. Farewell the jewel crown, farewell the velvet gown. Watch it all come tumbling down. Goodbye to the crown. Goodbye to the crown.
Hello there, and welcome to the Monarchy with me, Samson Sees, here on Press TV. You are watching the programme On Britain. Correction, the counter-mainstream programme On Britain. We bring you stories that are not normally aired on corporate television networks. On today's episode, we shall zoom in on the activities of some royals, so prepare yourselves. Here is a starter. See, I told you. Okay, let's quickly get through the headlines that have been hitting the UK throughout the past week. A London-based human rights campaign group has called on the British government to come clean on its policy regarding deadly drone strikes overseas. In a letter to British Foreign Secretary William Hague, legal charity Reprieve urged the government to publish its assessment of the number of civilians killed in the drone attacks across the globe. The UK ambassador to Washington, Peter Westmacott, has said the US should buy British-made Brimstone missiles for use on its Reaper drones. A senior Conservative MP has called on British Prime Minister David Cameron to back plans aimed at curbing the use of stop-and-search powers by police officers. In a letter to the UK Premier, Broxbourne MP Charles Walker said Cameron has a moral duty to end the humiliating and inappropriate application of stop-and-search against people by the police. He also urged the British Tory leader to support proposals by Home Secretary Theresa May, calling for greater restrictions on the use of the controversial powers. A yes vote in September's Scottish independence poll would make Sinn Féin demands for an all-Ireland referendum in 2 years' time difficult to resist. In the event of a yes vote in Scotland, Sinn Féin would surely push much harder on a 2016 all-Ireland referendum, which might be difficult to resist. Threats of dissident Republican violence in the event of a yes vote emanating from some in the arch-unionist camp would show to be without substance. The Royal Bank of Scotland, RBS, is set to slash tens of thousands of jobs over the next few years in a belt-tightening restructuring plan amid tough economic conditions. The bank announced that its plans to offload parts of its international business and slash its investment banking division, taking with it at least 30,000 jobs over the next 5 years. The bank, which owns NatWest and Ulster Bank, will markedly slim down its 11,000 investment bank staff as it withdraws from US and Asian markets. A British government minister has once again described those Britons receiving training in Syria as a security threat to the UK and urged authorities not to let them go to the country. Immigration Minister James Brokenshire repeated his warning that the UK faces a major security threat from the militants who travel to Syria with amateur aid convoys and receive training by terrorist groups fighting the government of President Bashar al-Assad. Brokenshire, who is also the Home Office Minister responsible for security, expressed concern that the return to Britain of armed, trained and dangerous militants from the Middle Eastern country will be a significant threat for the foreseeable future. New Zealand may ditch the British imperialist flag. New Zealand Prime Minister John Key says there may be a referendum to change the country's flag. He believes public opinion is split down the middle on whether or not to keep the current version with a Union flag canton, and there is no obvious alternative version at the moment. New Zealand Green Party co-leader Russell Norman also supported the idea and said wide-ranging public consultation is needed. Socialist Indigenous Rights Mana Party MP Hon Harawira says he'd like to see the current flag replaced by the Tino Rangatiratanga flag, sometimes referred to as the Maori flag. He said, "It's more reflective of our history, of our world, and it shows that we're not just babies of Queen Victoria. We are our own people, an independent nation." Security forces in Saudi Arabia have killed 2 anti-government activists in the Qatif governorate of the eastern province. The 2 were killed when regime forces supported by armed vehicles stormed the town of Awamia, which has been the scene of violent clashes between anti-regime protesters and Saudi forces for 3 years. The move is considered as a part of a fresh crackdown on anti-regime protests in Saudi Arabia. Just miles away, heir to the British throne Prince Charles was dancing with a sword, wearing a traditional ankle-length garment known as a sob, for the all-male ceremony, which is usually performed at events such as weddings. It was like nothing was happening, and all Charles focused on was to appease Saudi despots and seal a new arms deal with the backwards regime. Campaign Against Arms Trade has reacted to the surprising move. Prince Charles flew to Saudi Arabia and danced for its autocratic rulers. The next day, Saudi Arabia and arms company BAE Systems announced they had finalized their latest multi-billion-pound weapons deal. Charles was in Saudi Arabia at the request of the UK government's Foreign and Commonwealth Office. BAE's share price was set to fall this week unless agreement could be reached on its latest sales of Eurofighter Typhoon fighter jets to Saudi Arabia. So the UK government sent in the royals to seal the deal. As a Buckingham Palace spokesperson has said, Middle East potentates like meeting princes. Human rights organizations had highlighted Saudi Arabia's appalling record on human rights and urged Charles to use his visit to promote reform. Instead, he has sent a clear signal of support for repression. This is just the latest installment in a shameful record of UK governments pulling out all the stops to help secure BAE's weapons deals, and of the royal family helping. Prince Charles last visited Saudi Arabia only 11 months ago. The trip was explicitly requested by the UK government to help enhance military links. Just last month, Prince Andrew was promoting BAE's jets to Saudi ally Bahrain, despite its own ongoing crackdown. The royal family claim to be apolitical, but these are not apolitical actions. They are political actions which put the interests of private weapons companies before human rights, and they are a shameful international representation of the UK.
My impression was that the prince was actually uncomfortable. I thought that the role of a royal is not to be an arms dealer. And this is exactly what's happening in these British-Saudi relationships. We are dealing with a country that used to have a very, very long relationship with the Saudi Arabia and still has that relationship. And then instead of using that relationship to advance human rights and advance freedom around the world, it has chosen to deal in arms and to turn a blind eye to the oppressive tactics of the Saudi government. It's really a sad day for democracy when you see these Western European democracies selling their soul for the mighty dollar or the mighty pound.
The media reported Charles's sword dance with glee, but very few outlets were focusing on the wider message he sent. On the 20th of February, campaigners were threatened with arrest for unveiling a banner at Buckingham Palace to expose the royal family's support for arms sales and human rights abuse.
The priority for Britain is to do business, and you look at it now, the figures are absolutely astounding. Britain really needs Saudi Arabia. It's a major investor in this country, and Britain, of course, needs Saudi Arabia and the other Persian Gulf states in order to sell weapons.
He was probably thinking of his mother all the time he was gingerly going through the motion. Andrew Smith, a spokesperson for Campaign Against Arms Trade and a political campaigner, add to CAAT's official statement. Officially, the purpose of his trip was to visit a plethora of museums, galleries and sites of historical significance. But it would seem that it was carefully timed to facilitate the conclusion of arms company BAE Systems' latest multi-billion weapons deal with Saudi Arabia. Negotiations over the price of Eurofighter Typhoon had been going on for years, and even 2 visits by David Cameron had not persuaded the Saudi royals to sign. This is not the first time that the royal family has been used to do BAE's bidding and offer political support to tyrants. Over the years, they have rubbed shoulders with a number of despots and have been enlisted to promote controversial arms sales to a number of autocratic Persian Gulf states whose rulers are impressed by the attention of royals. Prince Andrew has been a long-time cheerleader-in-chief for the arms industry, and over the years he has been linked to a number of sales to despots. Only last month, he was in Bahrain as part of a 250-strong UK delegation with BAE and other arms companies to celebrate the sham that was Great British Week, a week designed to promote relations between the UK and the Bahraini regime.
We are all aware of the long relationship between the United Kingdoms and all kinds of countries and regimes around the world. In the case of Saudi Arabia, though, this relationship goes back to the 20s of the last century, and it has always come at the expense of freedom. It has always come at the expense of the aspirations of the Arabs and the Saudis. And to be honest with you, I speak as an Arab. My own country, Jordan, was also under a mandate. When I look at these opportunistic relationships between a great country like the United Kingdom and Saudi Arabia or Jordan or the Bahraini regime, when I look at these relationships that are based on opportunism, arms trade, I see an imperialistic relationship. And to be honest with you, it's even a little racist, because providing these governments which oppress their own people with weapons and giving them legitimacy is a racial act, in my opinion, because it's pitting these governments against the people. The role of the European powers, the role of Britain itself, foreign policy in the Middle East is also strikes me as racist.
Not only are these endorsements unethical, but they give legitimacy to oppressive governments and undermine democracy movements in those countries. Furthermore, these visits cheapen and demean the UK's claims to support human rights and democracy around the world. In theory, the royals are supposed to play a ceremonial and apolitical role, but there is nothing apolitical about supporting the arms trade. Unfortunately, Charles has always had an attachment to powerful and oppressive Middle Eastern rulers, a point underlined by the fact that this was his 9th state visit to the Saudi regime. Royalists and Republicans may not see eye to eye on a lot of things, but surely one point everyone can agree on is that it is totally inappropriate for the heir to the throne to be using his position to lend UK support to some of the worst dictators and human rights abusers around the world.
Well, the role of the Saudi royal family is very well documented. On the one hand, they try to have these diplomatic relationships with European countries, and they tell them what they want to hear. On the other hand, it's basically targeting any other country that has any sign of movement toward democracy. We have seen what they have done in Egypt. They have poured billions of dollars, to support the military coup in Egypt. When you take a look at what's happening in Syria, they have basically helped thousands of militants and radicals and terrorists to go into Syria. So whenever this regime moves, it always moves in the direction of fleecing its own country, purchasing weapons with oil money. It's always moving in the direction of oppressing its own people as well as people in the region. It's really, as many people view the Saudi regime, it's not easy to deal with this regime because you want the stability of the flow of oil, but at the same time you are aware that this is a very, very dangerous regime which has exported terrorism and continues to.
His support for the Saudi dictatorship may not be unique, but it is yet another sign of the contradictory and hypocritical nature of UK foreign policy. Unfortunately, when it comes to business, the human rights usually often play second fiddle to the short-term profits of the arms companies. This is why the UK has licensed over £5.6 billion worth of weaponry to Saudi Arabia in the last 5 years alone. Unfortunately, not for the first time, the royal family has allowed itself to be co-opted into a dirty business. However, this shows that the solidarity between British monarchs and Saudi backward rulers is deep-rooted in history. No one can reject the role of the British colonel, fashioned in Hollywood as the Lawrence of Arabia in Arabs' fight against the Ottoman Empire and the subsequent formation of Wahhabi Saudi Arabia. Britain was indeed the first Saudi ruler's mentor from the very beginning, and the later Saudi monarch did not hide these ties. The creation of Saudi Arabia was also a victory for Britain, in line with its original designs envisaged in Wahhabi Islam, whose founder was excommunicated by scholars of all other Islamic sects in the 18th century. The campaign against arms trade has launched a petition to tell the Foreign Office and Buckingham Palace that the royal family should not be pushing arms sales to dictators. CAAT members invite all UK citizens to help exposing it. September the 18th, 2014 is a crucial date for the future of the United Kingdom. It is the first time that a vote will ever have been held with the consent of an entire national community on dissolving the terms of one of the UK's foundational political unions, while that union was still in effect. It is a mould-breaking challenge to the nature and continuation of the UK as a state actor. Starting from this programme, we will try to answer questions about the impacts of independence on various issues. This information is extracted from the official manifesto published by the Scottish Government. Who can vote in the Scottish independence referendum? Could British citizens living in other parts of the UK vote? To vote in the referendum, voters will need to be aged 16 or over on the 18th of September 2014 and living in Scotland. They should be a British citizen living in Scotland or a qualifying Commonwealth citizen living in Scotland. Service personnel posted outside of Scotland along with their spouse or civil partner and any 16 or 17-year-old children may also vote in the referendum if they are registered to vote in Scotland. Voters must be registered to vote by the 2nd of September 2014. If Scotland votes no, will there be another referendum on independence at a later date? How will Scotland be governed afterwards? The Edinburgh Agreement states that a referendum must be held by the end of 2014. There is no arrangement in place for another referendum on independence. it is the view of the current Scottish Government that a referendum is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. If a majority of the votes cast in the referendum are no, then Scotland will continue to be governed as it is now, with devolved powers exercised at Holyrood and reserved powers exercised at Westminster. That means Scotland will lose the opportunity to, for example, remove the bedroom tax and to invest in offshore energy wealth.
In case of a no vote, how will the Scottish Parliament power be changed?
The last time political parties opposed to Scottish independence proposed new powers for the Scottish Parliament was in 2009, when the Calman Commission reported. In 2011, the people of Scotland re-elected the current Scottish Government on a platform which proposed significant improvements to the Commission's proposals.
The SNP is a force to be reckoned with across Scotland. We have seen some stunning results this evening, and our job is to make sure that we can unite Scotland, pull all of our country together and lead our country forward. Thank you very much indeed.
I will continue to work to see the end of Trident nuclear missiles in Scotland. This is our country and it will not continue to be despoiled by these British weapons of mass murder.
Westminster rejected the Scottish Government's proposals, however, and the result was the Scotland Act 2012, which falls a long way short of full devolved powers in Scotland. There has been consistent support in Scotland for the Scottish Parliament to have responsibility for taxation and the welfare system. However, none of the parties opposed to independence seem willing to offer this degree of devolution. Whatever offers of more devolution might emerge during the referendum campaign, they are likely to fall short of full powers in these vital areas of Scottish life. Nor is it clear that even limited offers of more powers would be in place by the time of the next UK general election in May 2015, or taken forward after that.
After a yes vote to Scottish independence, will there be a Scottish constitution? Will Scotland have a written constitution, despite that there have been no written constitutions in Britain?
A constitution is the collection of principles and rules that regulates the institutions of the state, how powers are distributed amongst those institutions, and the relationship between the citizens of the country and their state, including the protection of human rights. Having a written constitution means that people have clear information about how their country works and what their rights are, and it protects these rights from being changed or removed. It is proposed that a written constitution be drafted immediately after independence. Scotland's written constitution will reflect Scottish identity as a nation and what is important to Scotland. The present Scottish Government will be just one of many voices contributing to the debate to shape the content of the written constitution. However, there are certain things that will be included, such as constitutional guarantees on access to health and education, equalities and human rights, the environment, natural resources and the status of local government. Rules on war powers, providing a proper process that involves the Scottish Parliament in authorising the use of military force. A constitutional ban on nuclear weapons being based in Scotland.
What will happen for existing UK laws on reserved matters?
All laws that are in force in Scotland immediately before the date of independence will continue after independence until they are changed by the Scottish Parliament. This would cover all existing laws, including Holyrood and Westminster legislation and other common laws.
What will happen to Scottish MPs and members of the House of Lords in Westminster after independence?
With independence, Scotland will no longer send MPs to Westminster. Arrangements for the House of Lords will be for the rest of the UK to decide, but the House of Lords will no longer be involved in legislating for Scotland.
And that's the way the cookie crumbles. Remember, you can talk to us and even challenge us about the topics you see on this show. All you have to do is email britain@presstv.ir. Or if you want to spice things up, you can chat directly to our team on Facebook. Our page is called UK Desk Press TV. You've been watching The Monarchy, and The Monarchy has been watching Britain. See you on the next edition of the show, God willing. Take care. Ciao.
Poacher come with his poacher's gun, out in the woods to shoot someone. My lord, your time has come, right between the eyes.